Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today for our third webinar series in our three-part series. So today you get to hear from Lindsay about 5 ways to take care of your brain. So we're really excited about that. This webinar series is brought to you by Dementia Friendly Fairfax. I am Robin McLaughlin. I'm the Director of Philanthropy at Insight Memory Care Center and one of the leads for Dementia Friendly Fairfax. Dementia Friendly Fairfax, it's an initiative that was started in July of 2019 through a partnership with Fairfax County, Goodwin House, and Insight Memory Care Center. And Dementia Friendly Fairfax, its vision is for our community to be a place where people living with dementia and their care partners will be able to engage in activities, be supported in the highest quality of life, and can live independently for as long as possible. So if you are interested in learning more about how to get involved, it's all really volunteer run with the cooperative of these organizations coming together. Feel free to reach out to myself or to Lindsay or to go to insightmcc.org to find out more. Now let me introduce your trainer for today, Lindsay Vajpayee. She's the Director of Education and Outreach at Insight Memory Care Center. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Lindsay has dedicated her career to working with older adults who live with dementia and their caregivers. Her certifications include Certified Dementia Practitioner, Certified Alzheimer's Disease and Dementia Care Trainer, Activity Director certification with specialization in memory care. She's a master trainer with the Best Friends approach to dementia care, and she's also a Dementia Friends champion. So you are in good hands today. So I will turn it over to Lindsay to take you through the rest of the training. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. And thank you all for being here this morning. I'm excited to be with you for the third part in this series. Today, we're focusing on 5 ways to take care of your brain. When we think about the aging process and how that affects our bodies and our brains, there are a number of factors to consider. Aging well depends on our genes. Can't do anything about that. It depends on our environment. We can do something about that, at least in a limited capacity. And aging well also just depends on our lifestyle choices, and that's where we really have the most control. Even if we're healthy, changes in memory and learning as we age could include more challenges with multitasking. We think of multitasking as doing multiple things at the same time, when really what happens is that our brain has to really quickly shift between one task and another. As we age, we might have a bit of increased difficulty finding words. Before where that word might have just come right out when you wanted to say it, now it's like it's on the tip of your tongue, and it just takes a few seconds, a little bit longer to really get the word out that you wanted to say, which can be frustrating. It can be a little irritating. We might also experience some minor decreases in the ability to pay attention. However, at any age, we can still improve our skills, we can learn new things, create new memories, improve our vocabulary. So we're still able to learn and to remember as we age. It's just that, how our brain works, how this all happens, changes a bit. I like to compare it, our bodies, you might consider how your body has changed in the last 20 years. Do you run as fast as you used to? And our brains are changing too. Is your brain quite like it was 20 years ago? Does it work quite as quickly as it used to? Some change is normal with age. Sometimes there are changes that occur as we grow older that are not a normal part of the aging process, but could be warning signs of a memory problem, such as Alzheimer's disease. So this is a list of warning signs from the Alzheimer's Association that we'll just briefly go through together. Warning signs include memory loss that disrupts daily life. Not just forgetting some little piece of information, but really forgetting important details, recently learned information. This may be your neighbor who tells you the same story over and over again or asks you the same question over and over. Another warning sign would be challenges in planning and solving problems, deciding what I need to do, in what order I need to accomplish those steps in order to get my end result, and then what do I do if a problem arises along the way. The third warning sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks, driving to familiar places, paying bills, setting up appointments. just kind of those regular day-to-day things that we do for somebody who's experiencing a memory problem that's not normal for age. They may really start to struggle in these kind of daily tasks. The next warning sign is confusion with time or place. Really becoming disoriented to the passage of time, days and nights getting mixed up, really not being on track with what year it might be or season, and also being really disoriented when in a new location, really struggling. The next warning sign is trouble with visual images and spatial relationships. And what we see here frequently is difficulty with depth perception, kind of not being able to distinguish there's going to be a change in depth, or difficulty with color contrast, not seeing that it's two different objects if they're side by side and they're approximately the same color. The next warning sign is new problems with words in speaking or writing. So, we all might have some difficulty word finding, but this is when it really starts to become, very noticeable. It's really getting in the way of communication. Difficulty with thinking of the words that I want to say, with understanding and comprehending what other people are expressing to me, being able to write legibly and understand written material. The next warning sign is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. We all might lose things sometimes, but this is when people put things in really unusual locations, forget that they put them there, and really can't walk backwards in their mind and retrace steps to find a missing item. The next warning sign is decreased or poor judgment, really on on a regular basis in a way that's impacting daily life, making poor choices. That might have to do with money management, it might have to do with safety, driving, some of these things that we all might make a bad decision once in a while, but when you're really noticing a change for this person, it's something that's causing concern. The next warning sign is withdrawal from work or social activities, noticing this person kind of pulling back from things that they used to engage in readily, volunteer service, work, family gatherings, meetings with friends. And the last warning sign is changes in mood or personality, which could include becoming more confused, more irritable, more anxious, more fearful. And when we look at these warning signs, any one of them could be due to so many different reasons. But if we exclude some of these other potential causes, for example, if someone has hearing loss or vision loss, if they're experiencing grief, depression, visual changes that occur with age, if we can't attribute it to something else, it could be a sign of a type of dementia. So what is dementia? Dementia is a word that we use to describe a group of symptoms that affect our thinking abilities, like our memory, our decision-making abilities, our executive functioning. Dementia can affect our language abilities, both kind of expressing ourselves, but then also receiving information and processing it. And dementia can also affect our social abilities, the way that we engage with other people around us. And these symptoms are significant enough that they're starting to interfere with daily functioning. It's not just a minor irritant or something that's a little embarrassing once in a while. These changes are occurring on a more regular basis and to an extent that, it's really getting in the way of daily life. Dementia is not a normal part of aging, and it's not one specific disease. There are many types of dementia. The most common is Alzheimer's disease, but there are other less common forms of dementia, including Lewy body dementia, FTD, vascular dementia, and others. So let's talk about brain health. How do we protect our brain health? Really good overall health may help to maintain good brain health. You may be coming to this class hoping for, kind of that like one key, what's that one thing that I should do? And there's really no singular solution. Really thinking about our overall health kind of holistically, the things that we can do to help ourselves kind of in our entirety are also those things that are really meaningful for good brain health as we age. So we're going to be talking about healthy eating, regular exercise, keeping our brain active, social connections, and getting enough sleep. So that first tip, first way to keep your brain healthy is healthy eating. And when we think about healthy eating, we want to have a colorful plate. We want to have lots of fresh fruits and vegetables when we can, right? We want to try to limit those kind of saturated fats, for example, those red meats. We want to include more nuts and seeds and healthy fats in our diet. Fats are not the enemy. Our body and our brain need some amount of fat, but it depends on how much we're taking in, what type of fat. Thinking about those healthier fats, like maybe in an avocado or in nuts, versus some of the unhealthier fats, thinking about like butter and lard. So we want to think about adding less sugar and salt and solid fats to our diet. Can we think of alternatives here? Maybe rather than adding a sweetener to my meal, is there another way that I can add a new flavor profile? Might I add some fresh fruit onto my, and onto what I'm eating rather than sprinkling sugar? Or thinking of other ways to season our foods. As we age, our taste buds do change, and we find that we actually need to apply more salt for our taste buds to register that salty sensation. So how might I add new flavors to my food rather than adding more and more salt? Thinking about herbs and spices, for example. So when we think about fruits and vegetables, there's some brain health research that shows, in particular, dark leafy greens and berries are especially good for our brain health. And this doesn't mean that your whole diet should consist of kale and blueberry smoothies, but just thinking about incorporating some of those dark leafy greens and some berries into your diet could be particularly good for your brain health. When we think about grains, we want to think about whole grains rather than refined grains. Things that are going to help us stay full longer. Thinking about that whole grain bread, or thinking about brown rice or quinoa, or some of these other types of grains rather than that kind of white bread or the pastries that we might get at the store or the bakery. So choosing lean meats, choosing fish, choosing poultry rather than those red meats is going to be helpful. We want to choose low or non-fat dairy products when we can, and we do have to watch for sugar sometimes in these lower or non-fat dairy products. So thinking about like a yogurt, for example, take a look at the label, because it may be low fat or non-fat, but look at how much sugar is also in that yogurt. And this is an example of maybe rather than choosing a blueberry yogurt, maybe I can choose a plain yogurt that doesn't have the added sugar and add some fresh blueberries on top. We want to think about our portion sizes. When we go out to eat, we tend to get a plate of food that is way more than one portion. It could be 2 or even 3 portions right there on one plate. So what is a reasonable portion? If we're thinking about a protein, if we're thinking about how many fruits and vegetables should be on our plate, really what does our body need? And so many of us were taught as children to finish our plate, but that's not always the best decision as an adult. I know sometimes when I'm out at a restaurant, I might immediately cut my food in half and set half aside to go in a to-go box and just eat the remainder that's there on my plate. Just to once you get kind of eating, sometimes we lose track of what we're doing, and before we know it, we finish that entire plate when our body really didn't need that. And for healthy eating, we want to make sure that we're mindful of drinking adequate fluids. Plain Jane water is really the best thing that you can do. And if you find that water is not very enticing, maybe you put some fresh fruit in it. Maybe you put a slice of lemon in your water. Maybe you add a little carbonation, something that really encourages you, motivates you to drink plenty of water throughout the day. You might think about, well, what other kinds of beverages, but we really want to be careful about things like juices that have so much sugar in them. We want to be careful with too much caffeine, thinking about coffee and thinking about tea. Have that cup of coffee if you need it in the morning, or the tea in the afternoon, but really don't sustain yourself on that throughout the day, because they're actually dehydrating. For a healthy diet, if you're looking for kind of a model diet, sort of a protocol to follow, research really supports the Mediterranean diet. That doesn't mean that you have to eat Mediterranean food all of the time, but thinking about a Mediterranean diet that does include lots of fresh fruits and vegetables of different colors, lean proteins, other types of protein, thinking about things like lentils rather than, the kind of the red meats that some of us get used to in our culture, in our American culture, thinking about nuts and seeds and olive oil, and again, plenty of water that goes along with our diet. Beyond the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet really is very similar dietary approaches to stop hypertension. So it's a heart healthy diet. And the MIND diet, MIND, which is sort of a hybrid between the DASH diet and a Mediterranean diet. So they're all very similar, really focusing on, again, fresh fruits and vegetables, limiting those salts and sugars and the more saturated fats. Step 2, our second tip for taking care of your brain is regular exercise. This is probably the most important thing to do. When I've heard different brain health researchers speak, I've heard people ask them questions like, well, which one is most important? If I had to choose one, what should I focus on? Regular exercise is it. Regular exercise, some of those benefits, it reduces the risk of diabetes, heart disease, depression, and stroke. We're going to talk a little bit more about those in a little while and the risks that they pose to our brain health. Regular exercise can help us to prevent falls, helping us to have stronger bodies, to have more endurance, to be able to recover if we lose our balance. So it can prevent injuries, which we'll talk more about too. And regular exercise may improve connections among brain cells. When we're exercising, that is helping our circulation. And when our circulation is better, that's more blood flow to our brain. And when blood is flowing to our brain, think of that like fuel for those brain cells, right? So regular exercise is not only really great for our body and to control other risk factors, but it actually does have a direct impact on our brain health as well. So some of the tips here: talk to your healthcare provider to see what activities are right for you. We really have to choose something that motivates us, something that we're interested in, that we feel really good about. Otherwise, we're not going to follow through, right? So what kind of exercise is meaningful to you? There's no one perfect exercise. Weight training is great for lots of reasons. Cardio exercise is great for lots of reasons. Maybe water exercise, walking, Tai Chi, yoga. There are a lot of different options, but really what it boils down to is you have to enjoy it. You have to feel motivated to continue with that exercise, to make it a regular part of your daily and weekly routine. For example, my sister loves exercise videos. She talked them up. She's really excited about them. She can fit it into her schedule. It works great for her busy family. When I tried those same exercise videos, I ended up sitting on the couch watching what they were doing on the screen rather than following along. It's just not motivating for me at all. But if I, make a plan with my neighbor to go for a walk or for a run or a bike ride, I'm so much more likely to actually follow through with it because it's something I enjoy doing more, and I'm going to be meeting a friend, and there's that accountability factor. So it's finding really what's best for you. And I know right now during this time of COVID, a lot of our options are limited. If you were someone who went to the gym or went to the pool or went to a yoga studio or went mall walking, some of these options may not feel as safe or may not even be available. So it's really, looking at how else can we incorporate movement into our routine. For some people, that word exercise is like, it's like a bad word, right? Maybe you're someone who just doesn't like exercise. So just think about, how do I get my body moving? Do I park, further away in the parking lot? Do I take the stairs? Do I, put a little more effort in when I'm cleaning my house, really scrubbing and reaching, doing yard work? How else can I get this movement into my routine? There are lots of programs in the community to coordinate on exercise and to learn how to move safely. There are a number of virtual programs, even while our community centers and senior centers may be closed. And also, it's a good idea to talk with your doctor if you have any type of injury that you need to be mindful of. You might consider even working with a physical therapist or a trainer to help get you kind of going on the right foot to make sure that what you're doing is safe for you and at the appropriate kind of level so that you're not at risk to injure yourself. In addition to regular exercise, we do want to think about kind of our whole physical health and how we take care of our bodies. Third way to keep your brain healthy is to keep your brain active. Keeping our minds active may help maintain our learning, remembering, and thinking skills. So I think some of us have experienced this over this last, 6 months of, our lives kind of closing in, becoming a little bit more, we don't have access to some of the things that we used to enjoy. Maybe it was classes or volunteer work. Uh, but when we keep our minds active, it's keeping those skills really sharp. When we step away from something for a while and then we try to kind of re-engage, we might find that it's more difficult than we remembered. There is some element of use it or lose it here, right? We don't want to let those parts of the brain get rusty. We want to exercise our brain in lots of different ways. So you may be someone who really enjoys crossword puzzles, for example. And crossword puzzles are great for your brain, but I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket. I wouldn't rely on crossword puzzles alone to keep my mind active because our brains work in lots of different ways. And the crossword puzzle is really, it's kind of working in like one area. But let's say I gave you a workbook of math problems. That's an entirely different skill set in our brains than working on a crossword puzzle. Or let's say you flip on the TV and Jeopardy is on, and that kind of rapid fire having to come up with an answer also works a different part of the brain than a crossword puzzle or a math worksheet. So we want to think about how we can diversify, how we can work lots of parts of our brains on a regular basis. So some activity ideas might include reading books and magazines, and especially think about, how do I take it up a notch? Maybe I'm someone who's always been an avid reader, or I've always enjoyed flipping through a magazine. But how do I take something I already enjoy and just kick it up a notch? Maybe I read a different genre. Maybe I join a book club to discuss what I'm reading. Maybe I read some more in-depth magazine articles rather than just kind of the headlines and the captions. How do I just challenge myself a little bit more? Other activities might include playing games, so especially in games that involve strategy. Think about chess, think about bridge. These are games that are really challenging our minds in different ways and just kind of making us use our brains in ways that we don't always do throughout our daily routine. Puzzles can be great, whether it's like a jigsaw puzzle or Sudoku or word finds, or, there's lots of different ways that we might be able to engage in this area. And again, finding something that you enjoy so that you actually feel motivated to participate. You might consider taking a class. And actually right now, I mean, it's a shame that we can't be out and physically together more, but this has opened up a whole new world of virtual opportunities. Classes that previously had been in person and maybe were too far away from you, too expensive, you might be able to find some really great online options where you still have an opportunity to connect with other people and to learn about a subject that you're really interested in. You might also consider joining a club. So thinking about whether it's a book club or a gardening club or a language club, being able to keep your mind active while also interacting with other people, that's a really great 2-for-1. Fourth part of brain health, social connections. Keeping your mind active may help us maintain our learning, remembering, and thinking skills. And when we are with other people, our brains are being challenged in ways that they wouldn't be if we were by ourselves, right? If I'm at home alone, there's no one engaging me in conversation, no one challenging me or debating me or, kind of prompting me to think in different ways or to challenge my memory in different ways. So being with other people is a great motivator to use different parts of our brain. We really have to be kind of nimble when we're with other people. And there are ways that we can continue to be socially connected, even if we're not as physically together as we might have been before. We can be social and stay connected by volunteering or by continuing work, by joining a social club or even a gathering of friends and family, whether it's in person and in a very safe space, or even if it's virtual. We might try programs through our local community organizations. So thinking about your community center and your civic organizations, and other opportunities where you really get to connect with other people. Great things to do to keep our brain as healthy as possible as we age. And the fifth way to keep our brains as healthy as we can is to get enough sleep. There are some theories that sleep helps clear abnormal proteins in our brain and helps consolidate memories, which boosts our overall memory and brain health. It is important that we try to get, kind of that recommended 7 to 8 consecutive hours of sleep per night. That's going to be more beneficial than getting fragmented sleep, where maybe you're only sleeping for 2 or 3 hours at a time, and then you're up and, sort of having this piecemeal sleep throughout the day. I mean, if that's all you can get, that's certainly better than nothing, but really being mindful of trying to get this consolidated, like consecutive sleep is going to be the most meaningful for our brain health. So consecutive sleep gives our brain the time to consolidate and store our memories more effectively. So what are the risks to brain health? What do I need to, really watch out for? Some of the potential threats to our brain health that we'll talk about: accidents, alcohol, smoking, some medicines, and certain health conditions. So first risk factor, accidents. So accidents might include things like falls, things like injuries, which could be a threat to our brain health, right? If I fall and I bang my head so hard, or I get in a car accident and I have a head injury, of course that could be a threat to my brain health. And there are ways that we can reduce our risk of accidents. We can exercise to improve our balance and coordination. Again, kind of circling back to that importance of regular exercise to stay really strong. We can wear safety belts when we're in the car, helmets when we're doing things like riding a bike. We could take a fall prevention class. If you're in Fairfax County, they have a great series of classes that focus on fall prevention, and they're free and open to the public. We can make sure that our home is safe, that we don't have a lot of clutter laying around, and especially that we don't have things like throw rugs on the floor, which are, really common. People trip on their throw rug and that's how a lot of falls occur, or that we don't have like a wet floor in the bathroom, finding ways to keep our home as safe as possible. We can review our medicines with a healthcare provider. Some medications could cause dizziness or sedation, and those are things that can increase our risk for accidents. We want to have our vision checked. If we're not seeing clearly, we may not see something that's in our path. We may have some of that difficulty with depth perception. This could cause an accident. And again, sleep, circling back to that, really important that we get enough sleep. When we are really fatigued, when we're exhausted, we don't think well, we don't react quickly, again, making us more at risk for accidents. Another risk factor is alcohol. Consuming alcohol can affect the way our brain functions. Alcoholic beverages could impair communication among brain cells. They could cause drowsiness, dizziness, slurred speech, fuzzy memory. And even beyond kind of the short term, maybe I drank too much and I don't feel well, or maybe tomorrow morning I don't remember what happened very clearly from last night. But there can also be long-term impacts from kind of regular alcohol misuse. Those impacts might be on balance, coordination, memory, emotion, and even body temperature. There is a form of dementia that's actually directly related to long-term alcohol misuse. And alcohol can be really dangerous when mixed with certain medications. So we really have to be careful of, if we should be drinking and how much we're drinking and how the medications I'm taking might play into this equation. When we think about alcohol use under the age of 65, there's a kind of a standard uh, recommendation that up to 2 drinks a day for men would be considered safe, and up to 1 drink a day for women. But then after the age of 65, the way our body metabolizes alcohol actually changes. And so that recommended kind of limit on what would be safe for alcohol consumption after 65 reduces. So for men, it's really up to 1 drink a day. And for women, it's less than 1 drink a day that would be considered safe. And when we think about 1 drink, we have to be mindful of, well, what is a standard drink? Maybe that's 5 ounces if it's a glass of wine, how many ounces if it were beer or if it were hard alcohol. So really being mindful of how much I'm ingesting and what type of effect does this have both short term and long term on my health. Another risk factor is smoking and the related risks associated with that. So smoking, we think of a lot as, affecting our lungs, it affects our heart, and it also affects our brain. And there are a lot of benefits to quitting smoking at any age. It can lower our risk of heart attacks, stroke, and lung disease. It promotes better blood circulation. Remember that blood flow through the brain, fueling brain cells. And also, another benefit is that we're not exposing others to secondhand smoke. One of the things about stopping smoking and cognitive health is for someone who smokes, stopping smoking can bring that part of their risk for cognitive decline way down almost to the level of someone who never smoked in a very short period of time. I mean, there's a very clear change in risk for cognitive decline when someone stops smoking. So in addition to smoking, we want to think about how we can limit our exposure to air pollution. Remember, way in the beginning of this presentation, we talked about our environment being one of those things that affects how well we age. And so there may be some limited ways that we can control things like air pollution, right? We can try to do what we can to limit our exposure. So including from fires like fireplaces, fire pits, candles, from exhaust from vehicles, from industrial areas, because pollution can affect our breathing. And some of this also then has that risk associated to our brain health. Another risk factor includes medicines. Some medicines can affect the way our brain functions. This is something that you want to talk with your healthcare provider about. What prescription and over-the-counter drug interactions, do I need to be on the lookout for? I know when we hear those commercials on TV, it's this medication can be so helpful for this, but then there's that long list of all of the possible side effects. And it doesn't mean that you're going to experience any or all of those, but we have to really be mindful that it's a possibility. So talking with your doctor about all of your medications, prescription, over the counter, if you take vitamins, if you take supplements, making sure that your doctor knows about all of these things so that they can help advise you about any possible interactions. Also, pharmacists can be a really great resource that I feel are quite underutilized. So you can also talk with your pharmacist about possible side effects and possible interactions between medications. Some medications can have a side effect that affects our memory or our brain function. So some of the anticholinergic medications may have an effect on our brain health. Some of the Parkinson's medications may have an effect on our cognitive ability. However, there's also kind of a risk and benefit analysis going on here. If I don't take that heart medication, sure, I might think a little more clearly, but if my heart stops beating, I've got bigger problems, right? Or if I don't take this medication for my Parkinson's, I might think more clearly, but I'm going to have much more significant, kind of physical movement changes to deal with. So it really is an important conversation to have with a physician to find that happy balance and knowing that sometimes that will change over time. Some medications can also affect our sleep. And we talked a few minutes ago about how important it is to get enough sleep. And if you're taking medications that are getting in the way of that, again, an important thing to talk with your doctor about. Another risk factor to our brain health are certain health conditions. There are lots of health conditions that can affect our brain health, and some of them can be managed. So some of the common conditions that we want to think about here would be heart disease, stroke, and high blood pressure. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in a moment, diabetes, sleep problems. It's important for us to all get our regular health screenings and talk with our healthcare provider about any sleep issues that we may have. Really opening these conversations, being very candid, having this kind of good back and forth communication with a healthcare provider who's knowledgeable, who we trust and can work well with. So let's talk about heart disease, stroke, and high blood pressure. Heart disease and high blood pressure actually can lead to stroke and blood vessel changes that occur in the brain. There are some ways that we can reduce our risk. That includes managing our cholesterol. Again, this is a place you talk with your doctor. There are medications that can be helpful. There are diet changes that can be helpful. Controlling blood pressure, again, that might be through medications, through diet. We want to eat healthily. So we talked about how important that is for our brain health already. Eating more healthily can reduce our risk for things like heart disease and high blood pressure and stroke, which is better for our brain health. Quitting smoking, preaching to the choir here, right? Limiting alcohol, limiting our exposure to air pollution can help keep basically our cardiovascular system healthier. Diabetes. Having diabetes may increase risk of heart attacks and stroke. See how these things are all really connected. Having diabetes could also increase risk of memory problems and Alzheimer's disease. When our circulatory system is really being affected, that includes within our brain. So here, I'm not talking about, when we talk about prevention or control, of course, type 1 diabetes is something different that's diagnosed in childhood. It's not something that is preventable, but thinking about type 2 diabetes, how do we prevent or control that? Maintain a nutritious diet. Maybe talking with a nutritionist or a dietitian to determine, what's an appropriate diet for me. For example, I talked about fresh fruits earlier. Well, if you're diabetic, even though it's a natural sugar, we have to be really mindful of that glucose intake. So really understanding, how do I make all of these pieces of the puzzle fit together in a way that's going to be best for me as an individual. We can help prevent or control diabetes by managing weight through regular exercise and also talking with our healthcare provider about medications that can be useful to help control diabetes and to monitor any changes in the long term. So sleep problems. Sleep-related difficulties can affect brain health by leading to injuries, cardiovascular issues, and memory problems. Some of those common disorders that get in the way of sleep: insomnia, sleep apnea, narcolepsy, restless leg syndrome. So what can we do here? Again, we're really striving for that 7 to 8 hours of consecutive sleep each night. Talking with our healthcare provider and or a sleep specialist if we're really not getting that, or maybe we feel like we're in bed and we're asleep, but we wake up just feeling really unrested, really fatigued. There's something going on there. If we've been prescribed a device or a medicine, that we're actually utilizing them as prescribed. Quitting smoking can really help us with our sleep. And we might want to consider relaxation techniques too. Maybe I have difficulty falling asleep at night because I have a lot on my mind. I have a lot of worries. I have a lot of stresses. Maybe you're a caregiver. What kinds of relaxation techniques might work for me? Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's soft music. Maybe it's reading before I go to bed. Maybe it's getting enough exercise during the day. Maybe it's good sleep hygiene, right? Not looking at my phone or watching TV or being on the computer, for a while before I go to sleep at night. What might be helpful for me, to really help prepare for a good night's sleep? Another risk factor for our brain health, of course, dementia. And dementias generally involve a harmful buildup of proteins in the brain, the death of brain cells, and the loss of connections among them. Some of the risk factors for dementia include age. That's the primary risk factor. So dementia is not a normal part of aging, but risk tends to increase as someone grows older. Genes could be a risk factor for some people, not for everyone, not for every type of dementia, but for some people this is an issue. Head injury is a known risk factor. So we talked earlier about preventing accidents. Really important to keep our heads safe, that we prevent any head injury, which would increase risk for dementia. And strokes are a risk factor for dementia as well. So we've talked about diet and exercise and heart health. And all of this really does kind of then funnel into good brain health too. There are a number of approaches that show some promise in reducing risk of cognitive decline or dementia, but need more testing. So some of the things that we're looking at in research include exercise, healthy diet, controlling high blood pressure, especially at midlife, heart disease, diabetes, and possibly cognitive brain training, or just keeping your mind really active. So again, these things that we think could be helpful to reduce risk of cognitive decline are these very same things that we've been talking about for taking care of our brain as we age. So where do I start? This may feel really overwhelming. It may feel like New Year's Eve when you're making your resolutions and we've got these grand plans of what we're going to do moving forward, and it just feels unattainable. It's too much and it becomes discouraging. It can be difficult to take in all of the things that can positively or negatively affect our brain health. So what I'd like you to do is actually just start with one small step in the right direction. Just choose one piece that you'd like to take on, starting today, moving forward. That might include scheduling a health screening or a physical exam. Maybe you've been putting that off. It might be time to talk with your doctor, whether it's an in-person visit or a telehealth type of visit. You might consider reviewing your medicines with your healthcare provider. You may have prescriptions from this specialist over here, from that doctor over here, and these vitamins that your neighbor recommended. And really reviewing all of those together with your healthcare provider is important. You might consider adding one daily serving of vegetables to your diet. That's a place where a lot of us struggle. Maybe adding more fruits isn't quite as much of a challenge, but vegetables. So can I challenge myself to include at least one more daily serving of vegetables to my diet? Maybe I consider starting a food, activity, or health journal, where I actually write down my goal, I write down my activities, I'm sort of monitoring how I'm feeling about these things, really being mindful of this entire process. And maybe you find your community center's activity schedule. You really seek out those opportunities to be involved with other people, to get connected, to take a class. And again, lots of great opportunities online. You might look through your local area agency on aging to see what's available, your local community centers, senior centers, even faith communities, civic organizations, volunteerism, thinking about re-engaging with other people, even though it may look a bit different than it did 6 months ago. But I challenge you just to choose one small action that you're going to take and write it down somewhere. Tell a friend about it. Tell a family member. Get those people on your side to support you, to check in with you, to cheer you along, to to not derail you with your goals. Really get some accountability from someone else and check in with yourself. Maybe you put a note on the mirror or a note on the fridge or a reminder in your phone, to help you stay on track with your goals. There are a number of resources available to you in the community. Insight Memory Care Center is available to you, particularly if you are a person living with some cognitive decline, if you are caring for another person who is. We've got a variety of services, care, education, and support options for you. If you are in Fairfax County, you've got your Fairfax County Area Agency on Aging. Great resources available to the community. There's a virtual activity center. There are webinars and support groups for caregivers. There are resources to tap into, things like Meals on Wheels to help have access to those healthy meals. The Alzheimer's Association has a 24/7 helpline. So if you have a question, day, night, weekend, anytime, you can always call there and talk with someone. And also more statewide, the Virginia Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services can help connect you to more information and more resources to support you. And now we've got time. If anyone has a question, go ahead and enter that in the control panel under that questions section. So if you look at your control panel, probably on the right side of your screen, and look down to questions, click on that triangle next to it, and you'll see a space where you can type in your question. Or maybe you have an idea. What do you do to support your own brain health? A great resource that you've stumbled upon, a trick, a little nugget that might be helpful to your fellow neighbors who are listening into the webinar today. Or if you have any comments, feel free to add those in as well. I don't see any questions or comments so far, but go ahead and type those in if something comes to mind. And in the meantime, I'll share what happens next. This is the end of this webinar series, but if you're interested in learning more about dementia-friendly Fairfax, you can visit this link at insightmcc.org and Dementia-Friendly Initiatives page to learn more about what's happening with dementia-friendly Fairfax and how you can be involved. We always need more people to help move this initiative forward in meaningful ways. And also after this webinar, there will be an evaluation that we really hope that you take just a couple of minutes to complete. It will pop up on your screen when you leave the webinar. And if you missed that, you'll also get a link in a follow-up email that will have a link to the recording for today's webinar and also a link where you can complete that evaluation. All right, and now I'll turn it over to Robin. Any comments, last comments or questions that you might have?
Perfect. Well, thank you, Lindsay. I think you've motivated me to exercise, eat healthy, all of it. So thank you. Hopefully you did the same for all the other attendees. So I think I'm taking it as 5 minutes a day, no matter what it is, I'm going to do something 5 minutes a day to exercise. So yes, I'm telling everyone, so I'm accountable.
I love it. Good job, Robin.
But thank you so much, Lindsay. This was really great. Hopefully it was really great for all the panelists. And as Lindsay said, this is the end of our series of the Dementia Friendly webinar series. I know will be more, so feel free to check our website. You'll get an announcement, I'm sure. We haven't scheduled it yet, but if you have any comments, feel free to fill out the survey. Any suggestions on anything you need, a different webinar series in the future as well. So thank you so much for your time and hope you have a great day.